All right, we're back with more NBA coverage, and in this one, I'll be talking about the last two play-in games of this specific tournament for the 2025-2026 season. Now, coming into the action for Friday, you had the Hornets and the Warriors fight like hell against the Heat and the Clippers, respectively, just to stay alive and give themselves another shot to potentially enter the playoffs. Meanwhile, you had the Suns fall late to the Trailblazers, and you also had the Magic doing very non-magical things against the 76ers to fall, still with, yet again, another opportunity, potentially, to seize that 8th seed in their respective conferences. And the time, again, whatever you had to do was going to determine exactly how much you could put forth your own effort into winning this game. It is a true winner-go-home scenario in every sense of the word. And as soon as that clock hits zero, triple zeros, if you don't have the edge in the game, you're out. Your season is over. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. And so, no matter who it had to be on both ends of the floor, somebody in each of these games was going to have to rise up and make the impact plays to get the job done for their respective teams. And so, who exactly would that end up being? Well, over the course of the night, we would have some pretty interesting answers to that question overall. Now, I will provide a disclaimer once again, with both of these games being on Prime exclusively, I did not have access to them. I'm recording this after these games have wrapped up, and I haven't really gotten an opportunity to see them live. I have not looked at anything else outside of Fox Sports in terms of the box scores and just some general play-by-play diagnosis as well when it comes to these games. So it takes away a little bit of context for me in regards to, the big plays out there that might have swung momentum a certain way for a specific team in this, unfortunately. I'd want to be better about that, but that is not something that I can control. Still, I'm going to do my best to speak on it with the resources that I do have available to me. And I'll try to provide as much context as possible. Now, with that being said, to get straight into it, we have the Magic and the Hornets. And again, the Hornets, they literally had to win at the buzzer, using every ounce of energy they had just to eke out the win there. Whether it was Kobe White saving them in regulation, LaMelo Ball grabbing balls and clutching up for the game-winning shot, and then there's Miles Bridges hauling ass down the other end, keeping his stride and pace with Davion Mitchell to block that shot to win that game. So the Hornets were most certainly riding high just a little bit. The Magic, on the other end, they're in a constant state of flux. And again, as I said in the last video, who knows? They're going to come out and show the best version of themselves. Fuck around and do that just to try to keep the pressure off of them. In a way. The fact that Andre Drummond was able to hit a three-pointer to end the game against them, a game where virtually everybody else outside of Desmond Bane struggled to make a three-point shot. If they wanted to stay alive, they would need to actually play to their style and execute consistently for a full game. That is exactly what it was going to take. And they did not disappoint in that regard. Now consider this. We're tipping off in the first few minutes here. And early, the Hornets go on a very short spurt here. But after Brandon Miller made himself an early three-pointer with around 10 minutes to go in the first quarter, the Hornets were up 5-4. Now think about that for a second. This doesn't seem like much on the surface. Why am I pointing out that they were up 5-4 2 minutes in the game? It's just the first couple of minutes. That's not going to mean that much, right? Folks, that would be the first and the last time that the Hornets would hold a lead in this game. In fact, it would be one of the last times, point blank period, that this game was competitive. Because from here on out, it was all Orlando. Yeah, you heard me right. They actually decided to show up. They were hearing all the noise from the Magic fan base and even people outside of it showing criticism to everybody else but Desmond Bane. And they locked the fuck in and had their way with the Hornets. They were just bullies against a team in Charlotte who, again, has solid center play. But in terms of paint presence, they don't really have it. They can be exposed down there. And with a Magic team consistently looking to drive downhill and create those high percentage finish opportunities, it worked out well for them. You name it. It was Paolo Banchero. It was Anthony Black. It was Jalen Suggs turning things around after the performance that he did last game, and just completely giving them the fucking belt. They were held to 16 points, Charlotte, in the first quarter, as by the time that Jamal Cain made his only free throw in this sequence, they were up 38-16 after the first quarter. And while from there, the Hornets tried to make things a little more competitive as the game went on, you have this Magic team starting out that hot, or any team for that matter, it's going to be hard for any team to overcome that. And just think about that from Orlando's perspective when you get into how they win themselves a game like this. I mean, it works perfectly for them. Because their predictability is obvious. And yet it flares up, for the most part, when these games are close. Whenever they have to constantly get into a back and forth battle with a team, that is where you see some of this constant stagnation that has hurt this Magic team at times. You now arm this Magic team in this setting, in a winner going home situation, with a 22-point lead after the first. Yes, it's a game of runs, but considering the way that they play and how they want to run you out of the paint and force the action offensively in that area of the court, you could ill afford to really allow them to settle into the game like this. And once they were, nothing else could deter them from getting the shots that they wanted. Some of the things were still reigning true for Orlando. It's not like they were lighting the world up from three, but they didn't have to. Charlotte, and I'll get into their perspective of it when I actually get into the overall result here, they themselves didn't really foster up much of a counterattack in that respect, the way they typically want to, with how they've been this season from three. And with the combination of those things, also forcing them into a few brutal mistakes frequently throughout this game, enough to constantly convert off turnovers in the fast break, it was the perfect recipe that the Magic had been looking for, quite frankly, to gain the momentum and put this game to bed. The Hornets occasionally got themselves some solid buckets from their players as they were just trying to really work themselves back into this game. By no means was it over after the first quarter, in a way. You know, a 22-point lead can still be overcome, and we've seen it in this league before. You have to understand this from an NBA team's perspective. When you're trailing by that much, that early on, and it seems like it just continues throughout the course of the second quarter and the third quarter, you're now rushing through possessions. You're taking worse shots in terms of quality. You're not being as precise as you would with your reads because you now understand that you have to fill up the scoreboard in an absolute hurry. The pace of the game to this point shows that the Magic are trying to slow you down in a way. And they felt the need, the urgency, early and often in this game. Something that as good as, the Hornets have been this season, they were not built. And they aren't at that stage as a team just yet to deal with something like that and even think about overcoming it. Just the worst possible thing that could have happened for them there. And again, it continued. The Magic took a 31-point lead overall at halftime, up 68-37. And again, they were even in the third quarter and even in the fourth quarter in terms of scoring on both ends. But again, by that point, there was literally nothing that the Hornets could do, even at times where it felt like, okay, if you're the Magic, you better not blow this lead. No, nothing really materialized there. The Magic had full control and just outright won the game in dominant fashion. Again, you have to give everybody else credit there for hearing the criticism and, in this way, saving their season. And I'll get to them in a second. But again, third quarter, just, an occasional run or so from the Hornets every now and then in this third quarter was still counteracted by elite play from all of the core contributors on this Magic team for the first time in so damn long. You have absolutely no idea how much that means to this squad. That is something they were clamoring for. As a unit, they needed that. And they got it at the right time to get themselves into the playoffs. They didn't even have to rely too heavily on their starters for the whole fourth quarter by that point. Again, you want to take it seriously. And when you're slipping even just for a second in that third quarter, you need to make sure your starters are in, contributing and playing to maintain the lead and not give it up. Still trying to be aggressive, not, just regressing and allowing the Hornets to have any potential to make this even a less than 20-point ball game. Keep it at your own pace and control, and from there you're good. Magic carried that energy all the way through, and they won in nearly wire-to-wire fashion outside of that early 5-4 trail 121-90 in this game. Now, again, to get into the Hornets' perspective on this, even with the results in this game, you can't help but state what a season this has been for them in their shoes. 45-39 overall on the year now after the loss, with a chance to get into the playoffs when it hadn't even seemed at the start of the preseason like this team was really going to have a chance to contend for much of anything. And what you can say about Charlotte here is that overall they've given the fans hope, with Neupel being able to come in and do what he did in the regular season for this team, with LaMelo Ball turning it around for one of his better seasons as a player, and maybe even a career best season, depending on who you ask. Although he did not get all-star love. Brandon Miller continuing to put forth his own effort as a tremendous hit for this Hornets team. And Miles Bridges taking a massive step up this season overall. Musa Diabate becoming a hell of a name on the offensive glass. Coby White materializing late after it was Colin Sexton handling the business before the trade deadline. Zion James also being a great hustle guy. Another player from Duke also off the bench, teaming back up with Colin Neupel. Through and through, this Hornets roster has just reinvigorated the Hornets fan. And that is something that can be considered a positive takeaway for them this season. When it comes to the game itself, you still have to go out there and you have to look at this from an objective and fair standpoint. Because we can think about the Hornets in this way and we can say all those things, but there's still a game to be played. And when it came to this, again, those early turnovers really put them behind the 8 ball. And like I said, although they have got the talent, they are just not at a stage yet as a team where they can overcome that amount of miscues in such a small amount of time. And he just kept on piling up repeatedly over and over and over again. Even more revealing for the Hornets is this, because if you go back to the last video, me talking about the plan for them and how you had LaMelo Ball and Colin Neupel shoot a combined 2 of 22 or so from 3. And me questioning at that time if that low efficiency could carry over for Charlotte. Because the way I saw it at the time was that with the kind of three-point volume they want to have as a team, that was just not going to be sustainable. That percentage they posted last game was not going to allow them to advance any further. And what proceeded to happen in this game ended up being worse than that. They shot 12-45 from 3 and only converted on 26.7% of their attempts. So in a game where neither team even cracked 30% shooting from the field, you still jacked up more threes and you made more, but you were far less efficient. And it made up over 50% of their shots taken in this game as well. You want to at least try to balance out your shot diet a little bit. If you're going to have a few more threes here, that makes sense. But they were unable to really impose their will in the painted area. And you could attribute that as a factor to them also needing to rely on so many jump shots. But unlike their efforts all season long, their shots were absolutely not falling in this game. And that is going to be the biggest hurdle for them in the context of this game. It was that, and it was them also getting, again, shellacked in the paint. 64 points given up in the paint as a team to just 28 for Charlotte, along with 24 fast break points for Orlando to just their 7. Just dominated in the most important area on the court. And once that control was established, there was literally nothing else that Charlotte could do. At least that is how it felt at this time. Now the Hornets still have a chance to grow as a team. And that is another aspect to take away from this. Even if you do manage to make it to the playoffs, if you're Charlotte, and get a first round series against Detroit, the reality is that, one, that is going to be a difficult matchup, and two, you would still need to make those strides no matter what happens. This was always about the learning process for this Hornets team. And I think that they have come away from this season understanding that they've learned a lot about themselves as a roster. And so it's now figuring out the best way to accentuate their strengths and minimize their weaknesses, or at least limit them enough to where they don't become fatal flaws for this team that hold this existing core back from trying to reach the goal that they are up to this point. And as they continue to grow as a team, that goal they're seeking out can also shift as well. But it is going to be up to what they do, what their young players work on in the offseason in terms of skill improvement and, again, just refining some of those essential details in their games to make sure that you always have something else to rely upon, even when that three-point shot is not falling. That's ultimately how the Celtics were able to get themselves a championship, if that is the comparison that Jaylen Brown himself again stated. Now, yes, that season in 2024 still saw the Celtics, 23-24 rather, saw the Celtics jacking up a load of threes. But they were such a versatile team. They could score on all three levels, and they had the defense as well to prevent other teams from really getting the physical advantage on them. And that was the difference maker. So you'd expect the Hornets to, again, work on those skills specifically. Trying to see if they can improve their defensive capabilities as a unit and see how they can continue to evolve. Because now, with them, having a surge of this kind, especially in the second half of the season, teams are going to be keying in on them now, and they're going to look to stop some of the very plays that the Hornets relied on to reach that success in the first place. Not exactly, the whole league has a target on your back mentality, but it's like there's a team that you need to watch out for. And so we're going to treat them accordingly. We're going to take away their bread and butter and we're going to see how they respond. Because as it is right now, and with their season ending in this way, they're just not at a point where teams are willing to really respect them and take them as seriously as they want to be in the future. With time, this can change. But yeah, in the confines of this game, man, Orlando just dominated them. Again, start to finish. You couldn't ask for much more than that if you are an Orlando fan. You really could not. Like I said, all of these stats here were to their advantage. But the most important one is the fact that on just one more attempt, they made half of their shots. On one more attempt than the Hornets had from the field, they made half of those shots as a team. Consider the struggles that they had in the play-in matchup against the 76ers and how Adembona, for example, was truly a force in the middle for that team as a defender. Then you look at the Hornets and again understand that they do not have the same caliber of defender on their roster at any level, at any particular position. Again, it was predictable in a way, one-trick pony, if you will, for Orlando. But again, a defense that is a bit inferior in this regard was always going to struggle against this Magic team when you think about it that way. Banchero, Wagner, Carter Jr., they used their size to their advantage in this game. And they were just too strong as a collective to be resisted in these cases. And thus, they were just able to, again, get downhill, slash to the rim at will, and go do what exactly they wanted to as far as this game is concerned. So, for the numbers here, again, all around, all the starters logged at least 10 points in this game. Banchero had 25, 6 assists, 2 steals, and 5 rebounds on 9 of 17 shooting with a pair of threes. Franz Wagner had 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists on 5 of 10 shooting. Wendell Carter Jr. had 16 points and 6 rebounds on 6 of 7 shooting with 2 threes. And Jalen Suggs had 12 points as well. So again, they came to save the day. And you even had just a load of bench guys also put up some productive nights. A far cry from, again, how they left Desmond Bane out to dry against Philadelphia. Now, when you have a full team showing up, you didn't need Desmond Bane to go as wild in this game. Still had 13 points, had a rough shooting night overall, did not make a single three, but you know what? They still won by 31 points. Even without him needing to match the production, even come close to doing so with what he did against the 76ers in the first play-in matchup. So, hey, all in all, you take it if you're Orlando. But now, again, with me kind of alluding to it, in the event that they would have won, with them now doing it, the Eastern Conference would be fully set first, as the Magic are now set to take on the top seed in the East in the Pistons. Again, I already explained it. Orlando, to their credit, they played well, and they won this fair and square. They can have this one. They can celebrate this for now. We know what the game plan is going to be for Detroit. You're going to shrink the court. You are going to make sure that they play right into your hands, in a way. Because, again, when these are competitive battles, you're going to see Orlando try to rely on that specific structure to just spam those downhill plays. Better defenses than Charlotte, especially, are going to be able to read that and put in their own countermeasure to attack it. You can almost rest assured that Detroit will go for this. And again, they'll dare them to drive downhill. Because again, with Duren and Stewart both being in, they have the defense overall. And that's before you even get to the wings, like Asar Thompson, or like Ron Holland II. Also, filling out great team defense. Say what you want about the actual frame of these players, but they can go toe-to-toe with the Magic in that realm if that is what it is going to take for them to succeed. And newsflash, again, the Magic consistently lose that battle right there. It is in those moments where once they figure out that they aren't able to get downhill as fast and as frequently as they want to, they're going to settle for open shot after open shot that will result in a fitting outcome, a miss, as Detroit, again, a team who, on top of playing that sound defense, likes to get out in transition and has one of the higher overall outputs in the league in terms of points off turnovers per. Good luck. The way those Magic teams will hit that rough spot at times in the games, whether it be them turning the ball over or just going completely anemic as an offense, you can only imagine the amount of times that will lead to open looks for any one of those Piston players down the court in this particular series. There are a number of things to watch out for, especially with Cade Cunningham being back in now. Of course, maybe still trying to ramp up to speed just a little bit. A lot of things to watch out for. I would say right now, I'm especially interested to see what they do with Asar Thompson. And I think that's a given, especially on the defensive end. Because more than likely for me, you're putting Amen Thompson on a guy like Paolo Banchero. I would think that makes the most sense. Maybe they try to keep him on Desmond Bane if it gets into a spot where the specific lineup they run, and I'm thinking in events where Duncan Robinson is out there, from one sharpshooter to another, Duncan Robinson is more than likely not going to keep pace with Desmond Bane. So you might try that there as well. But how exactly they deploy him in these formations is going to be really interesting to see. And then I'll say for the opposing end, again, it's not to say that the Magic don't necessarily have a chance. Again, they avoided the Celtics when you think about it. Of course they have a chance now. But I'm just like, if they can play that defense They can keep themselves in a game with anybody. The thing is, they don't do it consistently enough for us to trust that they can summon that on the biggest stage now. Also, even with them, as I said previously in the other video, even with them making the playoffs, I don't know if people are truly expecting them to go on a deep playoff run. Because this is going to be a very gritty series. And if that is the identity that they've got to have, I would think that the Pistons are going to be able to outlast Orlando. In that context, right there. Pretty handsome way, I might add. But anything can happen in any given game. And so I believe that, with this being said later, that first round series will start on Sunday. As well as that of the next game here to determine who exactly would head to the playoffs. And I guess I'll keep it brief so as not to be biased. Although they tried their absolute hardest, and again, 'tis naturally the case with the man being out there, the Warriors were just not able to get it done. They just weren't. Similar thing there, in a way, to be completely honest. Now again, they've been through a lot. They came back from down 18 plus in the first quarter and then proceeded to hold Phoenix to 17 points in the second. So not necessarily a bad turn of events for the Warriors there, but between Stephen Curry not having the greatest outing and also in a bit of a revenge context, having Jalen Green continue stellar play and play-in action, just shedding off the reputation and also knocking down a Warriors team in the process, they were not able to overcome that whatsoever. But it's what I had said in the last video, similarly to Orlando. Because yes, Stephen Curry is that damn good. And, a game like that is possible from Stephen Curry. He is human. He is one man. And again, you can't expect him at age 38 to be on his A game always. It's consistent. But again, each and every single game, it is a tall task to try to have him meet as much as the Warriors need him to in order to just come out with a few extra wins here. That is the territory that they are still in to this point. And it's kind of a shame. It's a great luxury to have a player of that kind, and you can't take it for granted. But as I said, you always get the feeling, even in a situation like that, even with them winning the game against the Clippers, I said it, you always feel like you are wanting more. Always. And while you had a few players here and there step up for Golden State, the reality is that help wasn't really as existent. Outside of, ironically enough, a man who a lot of the fan base just wants to disparage the entire time. Brandon Bajemski fucked around and made the best contributions for Golden State on the night, posting 23 points and 10 rebounds on 9 of 17 shooting with 3 threes. So he did his job. And even D'Anthony Melton, in a way, in more of a bench role, came in as a sixth man and had 16 points and 8 rebounds on 5 of 10 shooting with a pair of threes. Still, especially with stretches late in the third and fourth quarter, not being able to protect the ball frequently enough, they got up, as I was tracking this a little bit, they got up to 20 turnovers in this game. So, for a team who consistently wants to move the ball around, the risk that comes with it centers around the idea of having a few silly turnovers occur in the midst of all these different play sets. And it happened too frequently. So you have all those possessions, 20 in a 15-point ball game. Again, there's not a guarantee that you'll make all those shots. But having that many possessions go wasted in this kind of ball game, which again, by the final score, does appear to be a blowout. Yeah, it was still close for a while. That makes up a lot of the difference there. And I'll get into the Suns component of this in just a sec. But you consider some of the disadvantages they found themselves a part of in some of the metrics here, and then that really opens up your eyes as to like, holy shit, man. Like, what is actually going on? It's always going to be Steph Curry and Draymond Green handling a lot of the touches offensively, and yeah, that's ideal. But again, can anybody else consistently enough take the pressure off? And clearly in this game, the answer was not enough to come out with a victory. That defense was just getting roasted, especially from three. They allowed 7 more. And again, there were sequences there where for a split second, it seems like the Warriors are kind of regaining some hope a little bit. It's a single-digit ball game, and they're starting to turn it around. Maybe trying to make a shot and a run at the lead, and then you'll just have Devin Booker and Jalen Green occasionally hit back-to-back three-pointers, or Dylan Brooks cause a turnover and get himself a three-pointer, and have all these other players here contributing to good open looks from that area of the floor. Primarily Jalen Green. And again, I'll get to the Suns in a second in that respect. Because considering, that context, he played like a man possessed in this game, and he more than earned this win for this Suns team. But the key for them, the Warriors that is, man, it just always, in a sense, comes back to what exactly you do moving forward. Yes, the goal, as long as Stephen Curry is there, is to maximize the window and keep it alive. However, the young core, you have some good players that you can keep in the likes of, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody when he was healthy, Guy Santos when he was healthy. Yet still, the Warriors are just lacking in so many different ways. Again, you don't have the big men who can necessarily hold it down as defensive anchors. You don't have a truly reliable ball handler consistently outside of Stephen Curry on this team to take the burden off. And then, in another sense as well, with them being an older team, this was the case for a younger Sun squad, including the likes of Jalen Green, who are a bit faster in every sense of the word. They can move up and down the court at a quicker rate. They get up higher from a vertical standpoint. And they can endure a lot of the wear and tear that comes with playing the game, at least at this stage of their early careers. To whereas the Warriors, again, a team ravaged with injuries, to now settle for this spot in the first place, had to confront. Mike Dunleavy Jr., as a result of all that, given some of these lackluster performances at the trade deadline, again, essentially nothing to settle for Kristaps Porzingis at that time when you had Giannis still out there on the market. It's definitely a whiff. At a point, it's like you can't expect him to make all the moves out there. But at the same time, there are ways in which he could put them in much better position, and he just has not to this point. So you can understand why the fan base would be mad at that in a way. Those issues have got to be solved. And, while it's wishful thinking to, want to try to maximize this thing with Stephen Curry, I feel like these people are not understanding the newsflash in that he is not going to be in the NBA forever. And while you don't want to think about that early, because he's been that valuable to the Warriors organization, at the same time, the game, the sport, and the operations on the team will go on, in a sense, beyond Stephen Curry. Of course, you're going to stay loyal to him. But you have got to start thinking about the long term as well. Because to this point, you've now had to, take a chance on some younger talent while also letting some go, namely Jonathan Kuminga, and mortgaging your future in the process. Not necessarily having a lot of draft capital either, which again, in theory, would work if you were truly a championship contender year in, year out. Instead, you are meddling with equal parts things that, again, can be controlled in terms of roster construction and things that can't necessarily be in terms of the injuries. Again, no doubt that having Stephen Curry out for that 2-month time span put that team behind the 8 ball. The fact that they had multiple games where they were just sitting out at least 9 guys as a result of season-ending injuries or temporary injuries in the moment that were prolonged for, weeks even in some of the more extreme cases. Moses Moody going down with an injury in the Mavericks game, and so on and so on. Those are things that can't be helped. It all just spewls back into the larger problem with this Warriors team. So again, even if they would have made the playoffs, they would have had to deal with a gauntlet against the Thunder regardless, where they would still be left greatly exposed. So again, you have great players on this Warriors roster, but with them, again, just being disadvantaged and relying on their older players to consistently be offensive and defensive anchors, respectively, and Draymond Green, who literally fouled out and apparently punched Devin Booker or something like that, which, was just going around. But again, to this point, I haven't seen the game footage from anything. And again, it just sucks because I don't want to be box score watching. I just had no way of getting access to it beforehand with it being on Prime exclusively. So that does remove context for me. And, in terms of what exactly I'm saying right now, maybe that some of that stuff could change around when I actually see some of this footage from these particular games. But again, all I can do right now is go off of what exactly I have in front of me right now. And, that has been the story. It is what saved the Warriors in the first play-in game. But they now are sent home just wondering, truly thinking about what exactly they can do to either salvage the last few years of the careers of both Stephen Curry and Draymond Green in a sense, or potentially work to start building towards the future. Again, it isn't even the first time they've had to reach this impasse. In fact, you can argue that the moment they decided to draft Jonathan Kuminga, this was kind of the situation they'd been a part of in the first place when it came to choosing Stephen Curry and the contention or choosing the youth movement and the development process. You trade Kuminga and you try to invest in the former. And again, since 2022, they haven't even made it past the second round. Not exactly the mark of a team to be feared necessarily. Yes, even with the man himself out there doing what he still does at such a high level. He is only one man. Gotta try to get other consistent help in there. That's his Suns in this game. To spend all the time there doesn't necessarily do it justice for them. Like they, and again, namely Jalen Green, dominated. Like I said, you consider the case for him, his inefficient play in that series versus the Warriors last year is what made the fan base in a way kind of have second thoughts about their investment in him. And thus, that regime decided to send him over to the Suns, along with Dillon Brooks. Green, earlier in the season himself, had been dealing with hamstring injuries on multiple occasions. So he had to wait a while just to make his true Suns debut and truly get his feet under him as a part of this team. And while that, stretch to reassert himself into live play has been a bit shaky at times, when the Suns needed him to showcase the return on their investment, he has done more than his fair share. He'll end this play-in tournament averaging essentially 35.5 points per game, trying to be the offensive engine in a way for this Suns team. And you know what? It's interesting when you think about it that way, because you'll associate Devin Booker with that mostly, and you see that, again, Dillon Brooks had himself a career-high year in scoring as well. However, when it comes to Jalen Green, when the Suns are at their full strength, you get the feeling that Jalen Green now has the ability to slide down into a true shooting guard position and utilize his best ability to score more frequently than he would ever really be able to. Now, by no means is Devin Booker a true point guard, but again, he's developed a playmaking bag, and even in this game, he had 8 assists with just a single turnover. So it frees Jalen Green up to take advantage of those mismatches, and with his combination of speed and athleticism, there aren't too many people who can consistently cover him when he is truly in his element as a player. And for him, it was about the mental block. I'd be interested to look at how he got some of these shots off. But again, just, taking advantage of the defense, going after these players, and just hitting shot after shot after shot. He led the team with 8 threes on 14 attempts and shot 14 of 20 in this game, while also grabbing 6 rebounds. That is a man who is out for revenge, telling you exactly what he's going to do to you and then executing it on the playing surface. To where, again, he now knocks you out of playoff contention as the Suns, winning this 111-96, would advance and secure the 8th seed to seal up the Western Conference playoffs. Great game by Jalen Green again, but it wasn't just him. Jordan Goodwin's hustle has got to be studied. And as I noted in the Trailblazers game for a second, although I didn't necessarily express this point outright in the video, he is an enigma of a player. He will just do some of the most random stuff on the court, but then he'll give you games where it is just unrelenting defense and somewhat capable offense, to the point where he was actually one of the starters in this game. And it paid off for Phoenix mightily. Just think about this. 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 steals for Jordan Goodwin in this game on 7 of 11 shooting. And he was also automatic, hitting 4 of his 7 3-point attempts. And just think about that for a second. Almost a 20-point double-double and over 5 steals for a player who is going to be on the shorter end in terms of those out there on the court. Again, hustling, playing his ass off, trying to get this Suns team ushered into that candidacy for playoff contention as they try to make their own campaign in the race to the NBA Finals. He's been around the league for quite some time, but he's an intriguing player to have, especially as you want other guys like Rasheer Fleming, like Ryan Dunn, to be clampers defensively in their own rights, and also learn how to work within the flow of the offense. Because again, while I'd still think that you'd probably want to play Ryan Dunn just a little bit more, he's just too limited offensively for them to consistently trust him on the court. And, while it is Ott's first season as well, also you have to give credit to him for one, being able to, in his first year, take this team to the playoffs. Even though, as constructed, even post Kevin Durant 7-team trade, right? More than likely, they were going to be solid enough. Still, would they go out there in the offseason and pick up Ott as a first-year head coach? The expectations are going to be just as low. And he proved a lot of people wrong with what he was able to do this season. And now the Suns can say that they are one of the last teams remaining overall in this league and get a chance to play for something more and extend their season now in the pursuit of exactly that. So that is an awesome story from Ott's perspective. Devin Booker, again, also added 20 points with those 8 assists. And also Iguodala also had 10 points and 6 rebounds in this game. The biggest thing for them, again, after seeing what Stephen Curry was able to do in the last game against the Clippers, is keep him out of rhythm all game long. Because, again, they had the game plan, the Clippers did, putting Derek Jones zeroing him, only allowing him to score 8 points on 2 of 9 shooting in the first half of the game. And, of course, he hit the nitrous later on when it counted. You did not want to give up that kind of flurry in your own right. And it, frankly, never happened. Now, again, without watching it, I don't know who exactly was the assignment on Stephen Curry in this game, but you have to give them a massive amount of credit. If it was Dillon Brooks exclusively, you'd hate to do so. But it got the job done. If it was Jalen Green, then that emphasizes the kind of two-way play he was giving you. If it was Jordan Goodwin, it would sound about right given the game that he produced. There are a multitude of different ways that they could go with this. And it could also be a case where they did, in fact, just try to throw multiple bodies at Stephen Curry at any one point of time. Just to, keep the offense guessing as they try to read the defense. You see, when you have that off-ball movement and you have just one guy tracking you with each and every single move, it can get difficult. But if you space out the responsibility, if you just make it to where as soon as he gets near a specific area, you have a different defender switch on Stephen Curry just like that, now all of a sudden, that confuses you a little bit. And again, that probably happened a few good times in this game, I would think. And it is in those moments where the Suns were able to pounce with anticipation on some of these late errant passes and get out in transition and make the plays they needed to in a 15-point ball game to give them an absolute advantage. Just think about that. That is the margin of victory for Phoenix. And they had 30 points off turnovers compared to just 10 for Golden State. So converting on at least 1.5 points per in terms of the turnovers they forced, which ended up being 20 overall in this game. That is a very effective rate when it comes to that specific metric. Very effective. You can't get much better than that. And again, it harkens back to some of the same things I explained with the athleticism, with the ability to just sprint up and down the court like it's nothing. As one of the older teams in the NBA, it's not necessarily like the Warriors can rely on that. And Phoenix, knowing this, took full outright advantage of it because they are more than obligated to do so at that rate. Why should you care exactly about that in a win-or-go-home situation? You're trying to focus on yourself in that moment. So you shouldn't be worried about the Warriors struggling in that regard. Exploit it, by all means. No problem for them at all to commit to that. He also, again, made 7 more threes as the Warriors just shot 33.3% from range, while the Suns made 36.7% of their attempts. They made all their free throws when they did get to the line, and they were just generally a tad more efficient from the field. The little things all went in the favor of the Suns, and it all led to the big determinant for them, the fourth quarter, where even as the Warriors were trying to establish a little bit of fight here, they never wavered. This game got as close as 7 points early in the fourth quarter, but they never wavered. They kept on maintaining their lead, getting into their own play calls, and hitting the shots they needed to at the right times while protecting the ball to keep Golden State at bay. You think about how the Warriors themselves needed a 43-point quarter overall as a team to win against the Clippers. Well, considering the score, it would have taken exactly that just to tie. And they would have needed a Herculean effort to diminish what was a 15-point lead at 3 minutes and 12 seconds left in the quarter after Royce O'Neal hit essentially the dagger shot before Jalen Green again forced a steal on Stephen Curry. So in that context, he might have been on him for that time of the fourth quarter. It probably shifted. I'll have to see. I'm going to be looking out for that. Best believe. But with the fourth quarter being a struggle for them all season long, to when it mattered the most with your season on the line, muster up that effort right then and right there was worth everything to this Phoenix team. And now, for them, they'll have the challenge. Because again, the Thunder, no matter who was coming out of this game, that is the gauntlet. That is the team where they're so good, they don't need to play the fourth quarter in most instances. Frankly, the Suns match up okay, but when that roster is fully healthy, this is still the Oklahoma City Thunder we're talking about. Heading into that series, that will also start on Sunday. The same Thunder team. So, while the Suns, again, are looking, as I kind of mentioned, for Devin Booker to put on a bit of a legacy act here, I just don't think that the Suns, honestly, even though they got that good effort from their starters in this game, man, if things go haywire, and believe me, it's possible against the Thunder, you look and see who else played in this game, and while Colin Gillespie and Royce O'Neal are solid players, most everybody else on this team is just not reliable off the bench. Now, granted, to their credit, one guy that they were most certainly missing was Grayson Allen, and he could factor into that. And even still, the Thunder can go 1 through a full 10. Not so much can be said about Phoenix. And again, you're playing the margins like that, it's a little bit nitpicky. But the Thunder have displayed that depth in the biggest moments. And more often than not, they've come out on top. Even with having to unload their bench unit. Even with literally having to play a chunk of the season with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being out and having to rely on their second and third units rising up into expanded roles and still making plays at an elite level. Yes, as a starting unit, the Suns can probably do occasional damage. But when those guys go out to take a rest that they will inevitably need, that is going to be the equalizer for the Thunder right there. With most everybody back and looking to repeat as champs in the NBA. So for the Suns, against a team that will also like to turn them over and get out on the run, making those smart textbook passes and making sure that you are at least 2 steps ahead of that defense is going to be the most important factor for Phoenix in this series. Because the Thunder still are just a force in terms of points off turnovers force. And it is part of what drives up their margin of victory. The last thing the Suns need to do is fall behind early. Because we saw how that ended up faring for the damn Grizzlies last year, facing off against the Thunder. They, again, were also a fringe team trying to make themselves a long run up against the gauntlet. And yes, it took Ja Morant getting hurt to, just completely screw up that series. Still, by the time of that injury, those guys were already down 3-0. Right? Suns will definitely be looking to avoid that. You have to at least steal a game in Oklahoma City. You cannot return to Phoenix trailing 0-2. If it gets to that point, this series is as good as the Thunder's. And of course, there's still a chance for them to win anyway. I don't know if many people favor the Suns here. But those are just things to think about. And those are just some of my early thoughts going into those series. Just to provide some brief previews there. So again, credit to the Suns for advancing. They will deal with the Thunder on Sunday. And the Magic as well would cap off a very interesting play-in tournament, to say the least. Again, you can say it's been a success. And the first 2 games from Tuesday were a lot more competitive. Even when you get into the Warriors-Clippers game, that definitely came down to the wire. In terms of the games from Friday, those ended up being duds. Again, as a Warriors fan, it's tough to see the Warriors go down. But still, that wake-up call has got to take place at some point. Something's got to be clicking in there. And, maybe that is something that the Warriors need. It is most certainly something that the Hornets can learn from. 2 different teams on the losing ends here, potentially undergoing 2 different directions. Both trying to create forward progress, yet still, the Hornets have a lot of margin, a lot of leeway. And the Warriors, again, with their reputation preceding them, they're still trying to hang on to that, but they just cannot quite assert themselves as true contenders right now. They just can't. You'd feel like they have the roster to do it, especially at full strength. And even still, that would be a massive question mark. That's the reality of teams that go out early. You now have a lot of time to think about those things as you head into an early offseason. But as for the Suns, Magic, as well as the Blazers and the Magic also, they would all advance to the NBA playoffs as a result of this play-in action. But that will do it for me. And that will do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.